Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this very first Monday edition of Border Report Live. I am your host, Rudy Mideles, coming to you live from Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. And before we explain what we're doing here on a Monday and what you can expect from us here at Border Report on a daily basis going forward, we do have some major developing news happening right now, not too far from here in McAllen, Texas, about 32 miles away to be exact. Now, this is video that I shot earlier today when this morning Border Patrol agents stationed at the McAllen International Airport shot and killed the man that they say fired off dozens of bullets at their station. That dead suspect, McAllen PD says, was Ryan Luis Mosqueda, who was 27 years old. And as you can see there, that is his vehicle, his alleged vehicle, and you saw some Michigan plates on that vehicle. Now, a McAllen police officer was also injured in the leg during the incident. No word from McAllen Police Chief Victor Rodriguez on whether that was a round from the suspect, shrapnel, or friendly fire, but the chief says the officer is recovering. Now, the airport suspended flights for about 4 hours this morning while investigators from McAllen PD, Border Patrol, Texas Department of Public Safety, and FBI agents conducted their crime scene investigation. Now, again, these are images that I took at the airport this morning, and you can see there, those are the bags that were in the suspect's vehicle. The explosives ordnance disposal unit was there. And again, that's another look at those Michigan plates on the vehicle that the suspect was driving. And those are folks that were waiting across the street at the hotel by the mall to actually get over to McAllen International Airport for their flights. Chief Perez says they recovered a lot more ammo as well inside those bags there, as well as assault rifle style weapons in Mosqueda's car. Now, again, this is a developing story, and we are working to find out things like a motive, Mosqueda's connection to the Valley and Michigan, as well as whether or not it was the suspect's bullet shrapnel or another law enforcement officer's bullet that hit that 10-year veteran of the McAllen Police Department in the leg. We're going to get you those answers as soon as we get them, as the FBI and McAllen Police continue their investigation into that active shooting at McAllen International Airport's Border Patrol Sector Annex this morning. Now, turning back to why you're seeing us here on a Monday. BorderReport.com was established 6 years ago to provide the untold stories of people living, working, and migrating along the U.S. border with Mexico. And as immigration evolved, so have we. And 6 years later, we've expanded that initiative with Border Report Live. It's the same message of untold stories of the border, but now it's available on all streaming devices that you may have in your hand or sitting on your shelf at home. Now, our team includes veteran correspondents, Salvador Rivera, based in San Diego, California, Julian Resendez, reporting from El Paso in West Texas, and Sandra Sanchez reporting from right here in South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley. And we're going to bring you their stories each day now, Monday through Friday at 2:30 Central Standard Time, or as I like to call it, Rio Grande Valley Standard Time in the afternoon. And I want to introduce you to our correspondents so they can tell you about what they cover in each of their regions. So let's start about 1,200 miles up the border from us to the west of us with Salvador Rivera on the west coast. Salvador, down here along the Rio Grande, we see a lot of different things happening because we have the coast as well. Mostly the migration patterns happen, the illegal migration patterns rather happen along the banks of the Rio Grande. We've seen the images that Sandra has shared with us, people leaving their stuff behind, stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about how folks are crossing over your way or how smugglers are getting drugs across the border.
Well, as we know, Rudy, and something that Julian and Sandra have been reporting recently in recent months, crossings are way down historic lows. Also, most importantly, legal pathways to enter the United States to seek asylum, for example, are non-existent now. So this is creating or sending people into the mountains, deserts, across rivers, and here out into the ocean, into the Pacific Ocean. And what is happening, and it's nothing new, but it seems to be occurring more and more. Authorities are finding out more of these pangas, these boats, fishing boats that are launched south of the border. They can load as many as 12 migrants on them, and then they head north. Often these journeys begin late at night. They can take hours, sometimes days, depending on the currents, on the tides, on the weather. And we have seen some tragic results of people trying to enter the country on these pangas. Just a few months ago, one of these boats overturned here in the San Diego area, sending about a dozen migrants into the ocean. 3 of them died, including a 14-year-old boy from India and his 10-year-old sister. So this crossings can have some tragic results. Officials from the U.S. Coast Guard, Border Patrol agents, also CBP officers, they try to stop these crossings as soon as they can, but this has become one of the prevailing ways to get migrants north of the border with better success. So the smugglers know that they can cross late at night and take their chances because there's no way that the Coast Guard or the Border Patrol can patrol the ocean. It's just simply too big. So what happens is the migrants on these boats, often migrants who have never seen the Pacific Ocean, who don't know the conditions on the water, often they are seasick the entire way. By the time they reach U.S. waters, they're often dehydrated, sick. So now these boats, they hit the beach and then they run, and hopefully that the smugglers are there to pick them up. But that doesn't always happen. And as we've been talking about, this oftentimes means tragic result of deaths of migrants being injured, dying. But this is one way that the smugglers are getting people across the border as they try to make money to simply meet a demand, because there are a lot of migrants who are still wanting to get into the U.S. And as you were seeing, they'll do it one way or another.
You know, speaking of getting into the U.S., down here in the Rio Grande Valley, it's been a hot spot for illegal crossings, those crossings that are happening in between port of entries. But out on your side of the border, it's actually a hot spot for legal crossings. Am I right?
Absolutely right. In fact, here in San Isidro, between San Diego and Tijuana, is the San Isidro Port of Entry, and it's perhaps the focal point of legal migration along the southern border. The San Isidro Port of Entry is the biggest land crossing in the Western Hemisphere. Every day, there are 90,000 vehicles that cross the border from Tijuana into San Diego via this port of entry. There are also about 20,000 people who will walk across the border every single day in the morning. And then they have to do it on the way back in the evening. Keep in mind that a lot of people legally work in the U.S. They legally go to school. They have appointments. They have families that they go see, doctor's appointments also. So this is just a fact of life, a way of life here between San Diego and Tijuana, as tens of thousands of folks on a daily basis, they get in that line after waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 hours at a time to get to work, to get to school north of the border. And keep in mind that this is one of 2 major border crossings here in the San Diego-Tijuana region. Is also the Otay Mesa border crossing, which also has tens of thousands of people on a daily basis crossing the border. It also has a commercial side, a commercial component, where a lot of trucks cross the border to deliver goods and products, produce, into the United States. There is a 3rd border crossing in the process, well, it's supposed to be being built here in the near term, but it's been behind schedule now for a couple of years. And this port of entry is supposed to take away some of the cars and pedestrians that are now very prevalent at San Isidro, at Otay Mesa. But this port of entry has fallen behind schedule due to funding, design issues, and other factors that are keeping this port of entry from being built. This port of entry, Otay Mesa East, as it is called, will be a toll port of entry. You have to pay a toll in both directions to cross the border, but now that is at least another 2 years behind schedule. Throughout California and Baja California, there are 7 ports of entry. Each day, about 198,000 people cross the border, and that's just between California and Baja California.
And that is, you know, seeing some of those images that we were just showing folks at home there, it is just incredible how many people are just waiting in line. And I'm sure, you know, we were discussing this last week with Sandra about some of the expedited bridge permits that have been happening here along the southern border in the Rio Grande Valley. So, you know, it's a lot of folks complain about having to wait a couple hours trying to get back from Matamoros over into Brownsville at the Gateway International Bridge. But I mean, if they saw lines like that, that is something else. So we'll see what happens with that.
And Rudy, if I may add, and this is happening because in the last few years, a lot of people have been priced out of San Diego. It's gotten so expensive to live in San Diego. So people have moved to Tijuana, Rosarito, further to the south along the coast. And every morning they have to migrate. They have to cross the border to get to work. So it's become part of their routine, their daily routines. And then keep in mind, at night, they repeat that whole process going back into Tijuana, another 2-3 hours of wait just to get home. It is a tough, difficult life that a lot of people bear here in the Tijuana, San Diego region.
I can only imagine the young children that are maybe school age having to make that same trip every day to get to their classroom.
A lot of people do. And my wife is a teacher down here, and she has a couple students who live in Tijuana. And a lot of these kids often get up at 4 or 5 in the morning. Their parents get them ready, put them in the car, and they cross the border just so they can be at school by 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. So it's a tough life that a lot of people do and a lot of people go through just so they can have some sort of success, enjoy some sort of quality of life here along the border.
Well, we look forward to hearing those stories as we turn this show into a 5-day-a-week program so we can share those untold stories of those folks making those journeys. Thank you so much for joining us today, Salvador.
Of course.
That was Salvador Rivera reporting in San Diego for Border Report. Now, stay with us because coming up next, we have Julian Resendez, who reports for us out of El Paso in West Texas. You're watching Border Report Live. We're back in just about a minute. Good afternoon and welcome back to Border Report Live. My name is Rudy Mireles, your host for the program here in Harlingen, Texas, in the Rio Grande Valley of South Texas. And joining us now is our El Paso correspondent, Julian Resendez. He covers West Texas, El Paso, that whole side of the state, and some parts of New Mexico, if I'm not mistaken. Correct, Julian?
And Arizona as well.
And Arizona as well. He's got a big old area of responsibility. And, you know, we were kind of talking to Salvador a little bit ago about those pangas, or as we call them down here, lanchas, you know, folks getting smuggled across like that. And we've seen it down here, you know, folks crossing the Rio Grande. But one of the things that, you know, and it's often talked about in TV shows and movies is cartels building tunnels. That's something that actually happens in El Paso, correct?
That's right, Rudy. Just a few months ago, we had the discovery of a gigantic tunnel going under the Rio Grande, starting in Juarez, Mexico, going into El Paso, into the El Paso drainage system. And yeah, I mean, pretty much every border city from San Diego all the way to Brownsville is a springboard for migration. I think the way a lot of Americans see the U.S.-Mexico border is as a wall, as a barrier to protect us, to defend us. The way most people south of the border, including our parents, see the border is as a bridge, where thousands of people cross every day to do everyday type of needs and chores, such as go shopping, go visit relatives. Here in El Paso, something like 22% of the population is foreign-born immigrants. It's a region of immigrants. That being said, yeah, we do have 2 main issues here on the border, here in El Paso, the same as in San Diego, the same as in the Valley. And those 2 main issues are immigration, trade, thousands and thousands of commercial and not just passenger, but commercial vehicles coming across every day, headed to the factories, to the car automakers in Michigan. All of that, those parts being assembled in Mexico, coming across our borders and going to their destination. And the other big story, unfortunately, is cartels, specific cartels, which are very sophisticated criminal organizations that have taken over almost every aspect of organized crime on the border, including migration. It is said that you cannot cross a major border from Mexico into the U.S. without having to pay cartel. And the penalty for not paying the cartel very often is that you're going to be kidnapped, you're going to be tortured until your relatives, either in the U.S. or in your country of origin, pay a ransom. So that's pretty much what's going on here on the border, everywhere on the border.
One of the things you mentioned there was about some of the crime that's happening and specifically kidnappings. I know recently you just covered a story about several corpses being found at a former crematorium. Now, has there been any developments in the possible related that being related to any cartel organizations?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there is the investigation continues. Just for background, just a few days ago, here on south of El Paso in Juarez, Mexico, Mexican authorities, Mexican police, found a crematorium that had apparently stopped operating, but was still receiving bodies, perhaps for as many as 3 years. And the accumulation of bodies was discovered by police. The obvious question was, okay, where are these bodies coming from? Are these the victims of organized crime? And no, apparently not for the most part. But that also bears another dynamic of the U.S.-Mexico border, and that is corruption. How is it that businesses, this business south of the border, was able to just up and keep taking bodies without delivering the promise to cremate them, when authorities are supposed to be supervising every funeral home, every crematorium? They're supposed to be going over the paperwork. And that's another constant that you're going to find along the border, Rudy, and not just on the Mexican side, also in the U.S. side, and that is corruption. A couple of years back, I covered the case of a CBP officer who was taking money from a Salvadoran migrant in order to fill out the paperwork for her and make her appear that she was legal. In South Texas, and I did spend 3-4 years in South Texas there, we also saw multiple instances of corruption on the U.S. side, primarily having to do with drug trafficking. Public officials at several levels getting involved in one way or another with the drug traffickers.
Yeah, it's certainly several stories, especially even in the last decade, as recent as the last decade, stories like that of law enforcement officials down here in the Rio Grande Valley taking part in things like that, having major investigations. But it's something we'll definitely keep an eye out for. We'll keep an eye out for your reporting. That's Julian Resendez joining us from El Paso, our El Paso correspondent. Thanks again, Julian.
Okay.
All right. Well, stay with us because coming up next, we're going to check in with our very own South Texas correspondent, Sandra Sanchez, on what she covers down here on her little slice of the 1,200-mile border in between us and the Pacific Ocean. We'll be right back. You're watching Border Report Live. Welcome back to this Monday edition of Border Report Live, coming to you live from South Texas in the Rio Grande Valley, Harlingen, Texas to be exact. My name is Rudy Mireles, and I am your host for Border Report Live, which you can now watch every Monday through Friday at 2:30 Central Standard Time on borderreport.com. And joining us today is South Texas correspondent, last but certainly not least, Sandra Sanchez. Hey, Sandra, how are you?
Hi, Rudy. Great to be here.
Good to have you here. I'm so excited that we're going to be seeing each other more than just on Tuesdays now. It's going to be a lot of fun.
We have so much to talk about. We can fill it.
Yeah, speaking of stuff to talk about, let's start with what you cover here in the Rio Grande Valley and a little bit beyond.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the border of Texas is 1,200 miles. So Julian and I kind of split the state. Starting here in Cameron County, we're on the Gulf Coast, and there are 3 counties here that make up the Rio Grande Valley, and that's Cameron and Hidalgo to the west of us, and Starr counties. And altogether, those 3 counties have about 1.5 million population. You know, it's called the Rio Grande Valley. We are really a delta. We're not a valley. People think that we are a valley. We're not. But South Texas then extends westward, Zapata and Webb counties, which is the Laredo area, and then into Maverick County, where Eagle Pass is, and Del Rio. So the area that I cover is from Brownsville on the coast here, all the way about 350 miles to Del Rio. That's where we saw so many thousands of people coming across a couple years ago. They shut down the Del Rio International Bridge. A lot of Haitians were crossing there. Very different dynamic. What's interesting, here in the Rio Grande Valley, that's what they call these 3 counties. The rest of the area is South Texas, so you don't call Zapata County or Webb County the Rio Grande Valley, and that's just not a mistake that you make. Everyone is, each town has its own culture, and here we were founded with agriculture, and as you can see, water plays a significant role for our region. And it tends to be very vast and deep. I think we have up here some pictures of border wall. So the border wall is about 450 miles have been built, and a lot of it here in the Rio Grande Valley. In fact, in the first Trump administration, former Homeland Security Secretary Chad Wolf came to christen the 450th mile, which was put on 23rd Street in McAllen. I was there to watch it. So, building this border wall, 30 feet tall, 5-foot anti-climb plate, 6 feet of concrete into the ground, 4 inches in between the slats, and the slats are 5 inches wide. It's a standard that we see across the entire border. But like I said, a lot of it is built here in South Texas, and they're building more. In addition, they're going to start building some kind of river barrier, which we talked about last week. We Thursday found out that the Department of Homeland Security announced they're going to put about 20 miles of river barrier. We're not sure if it's river buoys like we have seen in Eagle Pass, but they said that they're going to actually put some kind of structure inside the river. So one of the things we have here is, water. We need it for these crops, and sometimes we get too much, we get too little. The farmers here rely on the water from the Rio Grande. There's some, now you can see how wide it is. People in West Texas just don't realize how big, and the International Boundary and Water Commission is in control of the water there. They oversee the international river that we share with Mexico, and it can be 100 yards across, and it can be 40 feet deep. People over in El Paso who can walk across a dry waterbed just can't comprehend how much water we have here. This also causes problems with drownings of people who try to cross the Rio Grande, and actually we hope to bring you a show on that really soon, especially in the Eagle Pass area. But the water is very important. We've had trouble getting water payments to the Rio Grande from Mexico. We've also had that as a topic, and we continue to cover that topic because Mexico owes us about 1 million acre-feet of water, and they're supposed to pay this by October. They have paid some recently, but it's not been enough. And so leaders here are scrambling to find new long-term solutions because the crops rely on it, the municipalities rely on it. And like I said, sometimes we get too much. We had 6 inches hit right here in Harlingen earlier last week, and we had 1 day with over 20 inches hit right here in Harlingen on March 28th, and that caused a lot of flooding, kind of similar to what's happening, the tragic situation up in Central Texas.
Yeah, it's so tragic what's happening up there, and can just as easily happen here if we get the right amount of rain. And people need to remember that too. It's not just the folks living here, but everyone that's trying to cross the border at that time that weather is happening. Now, I wanted to go back to something that Salvador actually mentioned, and those we call them here lanchas. What are they called over there?
Pangas.
Pangas, yeah. Mm-hmm. So they call them pangas over there, but we call them lanchas here. Typically, we see those lanchas out off the coast of South Padre Island, off of Cameron County, out in the Gulf of Mexico, and we see basically illegal fishermen using them to catch fish. But have there been any stories that you've seen of smugglers using those little lanchitas to get people over?
Well, there have been. And, actually recently, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, she asked for a huge infusion of money for the Coast Guard to help patrol waters, not only over in California, but here on the Gulf as well, because they want Coast Guard to have more resources, more boats, more eyes on the water. Like Salvador said, it's a vast amount of water there in the Gulf, and these boats are postage stamps, and it's hard to locate them, but there have been instances. And as the asylum process is restricted, as people become more desperate to cross and just don't want to wait it out, they are finding more dangerous routes. We have asked the Coast Guard to take us on a ride along on a boat. We do want to get out in those waters with them because it's dangerous, and that is a route that DHS seems to keep pushing and indicating that appears to be a real area of concern, and they want more funds and they want more people.
And I mean, if you've ever, I know I've seen that strike footage that the Coast Guard shares of them doing water rescues that turn into, illegal fishing operation, seizing of fish and of those boats. But at the end of the day, they're starting those off as a rescue most of the time. It looks like those little boats, it might be one thing taking it down up a creek or on a lake, but those things don't stand a chance, especially in the early morning and late nights that they're trying to cut across and up the Gulf in. So I can only imagine how dangerous it must be for those folks that are trying to come to America just to try to make a better life. But those are the stories we hear every day.
And just, I know we're going to wrap quickly, but we have typically always seen these rafts just come across the Rio Grande. So this is an entire new phenomenon that we're going to see. And one thing that we've also seen a lot of here in the RGV sector is a lot of unaccompanied children and a lot of family units. So we certainly hope that these children don't start coming across on those boats on the water.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sandra. Appreciate you all. You, Julian, Salvador, thank you all so much for being here today. I really appreciate you all. That's going to do it for us for this edition of Border Report Live. You can find more on borderreport.com. Until tomorrow, have a good day.